Thank you, Leslie. Thanks, everybody, for waking up so early. I'm Charlie Madere, and as Leslie said, I used to work for Callidus. I used to work for almost every SPM vendor in this space, either a vendor or an implementer, and I've been in sales for about 15 years in this space. And, you know, somebody said yesterday, I think it was Peter Ostro told me yesterday, we were talking offline, he said, at some point, everybody here is going to be a salesperson in their own business. You've got to sell your business case, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm Charlie Madere.
Hi, good morning, and I'm Jason Kearns. I've spent the last 13 years implementing solutions for Callidus and other vendors, including the time I spent with Callidus. And so what we're excited to talk about today is how some of the implementation pieces and the operational pieces can really save in business case. But really, my primary role is to give Charlie a breath every once in a while in his presentation.
So, you know, given that we're all salespeople once in a while, we've got to sell the project that we're working on right now. We've specifically engineered this presentation for salespeople, so counter to what Leslie just said, it's okay if you're hungover and you're not in learning mode. It's going to be extremely straightforward, but there's a couple of key takeaways that we want you to walk away with. Namely, that sales is a hard job. I mean, look at that little video with Will Smith picking up the phone and calling some CEO you've never talked to before. That is hard. We put a lot of scrutiny and a lot of pressure on our salespeople in this room. We crank up their commissions, we change their personalized commission rates and up their quotas, and we coach them. And today is about turning that magnifying glass back on yourself and really stepping up your game in your job running these projects. We're going to give you some coaching tips and tricks related to a business case that are very specific. There's not a bunch of them, and I really hope that there's one or two things that you walk away from today that change the way that you present the business case to your colleagues, and that you go back and measure the success that you've had with SPM. Okay? So, modern SPM, we have that in the subject line of our presentation. What's that mean? SPM is an acronym that's actually stuck for way longer than any other acronym I've ever seen in this space. So even though the space has evolved incredibly, Callidus acquired all these companies, Gartner named a coaching inventor to be the guy that writes the market scope, Patrick Stakanis. I think that the space, since it's changed names to SPM, has evolved tremendously, and so that's why I want to talk about modern SPM and what that really means. And then I want to talk about the business case that you've all written today, the business case that was probably used to get the funding for what you're here to talk about, and how you can impact that business case by essentially changing your technique and upping your game. So who's Canidium? We answer a lot of questions. You know, people come to me and say, Charlie, what's good or bad about our compensation plan design? Sometimes they don't even ask that question. We'll just be talking about sales comp issues, and I'll say, you know, why haven't you guys changed the flat payout rate in 15 years? But we answer questions about plan design and what solutions should we look at, what business processes should we change, and then those are sort of the strategy side of our practice, and then we fix stuff. We drive sales behavior, and we do that by implementing solutions. By implementing solutions like Callidus Cloud, and then by fixing your problems like your data problems and your lack of resource problems, being able to help you run and operate these systems, and in the end, get more value out of them by doing things like modeling and analytics. Okay? So this is not all of our customers, but it's a bunch of our Callidus customers that happen to be at this conference also with us. Couple of key notes, key names up there you'll recognize that gave speeches at breakouts at the top. HCSC, Kimberly-Clark, and Zimmer all were involved in delivering breakouts. HCSC is a very interesting client. Carla Woodson, who is here, was sitting in a design meeting with me and Jason about 2 months ago. It had been a long day. These guys are in the Blue Cross Blue Shield healthcare industry. They're Blue Cross Blue Shield of several states, including Texas and Illinois. We had a grueling day planning out a pretty aggressive project as they are dealing with healthcare reform. And at the end of about 6 hours, Carla says, and oh, by the way, we need to fix the coaching problem that our company is facing. We've got to do it by X date this year, and we've got to fix the sales analytics problem that involves a bunch of data that's not even in Callidus. And really that's unheard of. And when I started in this industry, when I was at Callidus, you had sales comp people that were very focused and they were buried. But because of the cloud, because of Callidus really kicking the industry into high gear with all the changes they've made to get into a broader SPM space, you've got people like Carla, you've got people like Kevin from Kimberly-Clark that are taking on all this additional responsibility because they can. And the attitude I saw was, if you don't serve your customer, somebody else will. And that's something that I'm not used to saying. Usually in sales comp, you're just trying to put fires out. Kevin, I mentioned, from Kimberly-Clark, he and I were talking about a month ago, and he said, Charlie, because of Callidus coaching, there are people at Kimberly-Clark who will still have their jobs and be coached into performance who would have otherwise, without this tool, not made it. And that's powerful. And so none of that stuff, those things I was just talking about, none of that stuff is in the business case that I've seen historically for SPM. And so we're going to talk about enhancing that business case and what you can do to get that ROI in there. So this was the SPM world until about 4 or 5 years ago from my perspective. You did exciting things like paid commissions, you set goals, you managed territories. Modality, I think, is the word Leslie just used in his entry. And now you have all this other SPM stuff that includes coaching, it includes training, onboarding, content management. And this is what I mean by modern SPM, okay? So, pop quiz here for everybody in the audience. Who can tell me what this guy's about to do? What's this suit used for? Back row? Back row, okay. That's correct. He's going in front of the Capital Appropriations Committee to get his business case approved for SPM here. So, the fact is that SPM professional knows all the pain that the company's in. They've got this spreadsheet. You guys have probably seen this business case spreadsheet. And this happens about 5 days usually before the Capital Appropriations Committee. I get this call from the client, and it's like, hey, Charlie, do you have any business case spreadsheets that I can borrow? And, you guys have all gone to your sales reps also and asked them for SPM business cases. This is the business case you've seen. So it's cost savings. Get rid of hardware. Get rid of comp administration headaches, errors, overpayments, underpayments. You know all this stuff in your head if you've been dealing with sales comp. But that guy in that fire suit knows if they go in front of the Capital Appropriations Committee and they don't have a rock-solid business case, they're going to get lit up. What I have seen in 99% of these business cases is you barely get it enough. You take the assumptions that Gartner and every other analyst and every other consulting firm has come up with, and you minimize it down to the absolute minimum to make sure you don't overcommit and you get enough money to get funded. And we're going to talk about a much bigger opportunity that's largely overlooked today. Now, this is the anecdotal half to today's business case. So we're still in the not best in class. We're still in the average business case here, and you know all these stories without stepping outside your office. And what we're here to talk about today is really stepping outside your office and pulling in a bunch of people in your own company that you would never probably want to or thought of having pulled into your business case. They may not even know they're getting pulled into a business case, but what you're going to do is what we're going to recommend are some discovery tactics, some discovery techniques where you may be able to gather some data and use that for your business case, either initially or long term. But all these stories, sales are suspicious. They think they're getting underpaid. If this person who runs compensation wins the lottery or leaves the company, we're toast. We blew our budget last year by X millions of dollars because our modeling tools were inadequate, and we didn't know that the accelerators were going to kick us into an over-budget situation. That's the stuff that you've got in your toolkit today. So what's missing from that, right? So when you use a conservative set of assumptions like this, and you stay inside the sales compensation office, you're missing out on a bunch of stakeholders who are willing to stick their necks out and help to approve the business case. And you're also missing out on the opportunity to learn what the company's problems are relating to broader SPM. I mean, the fact is, a lot of us in this room, our job is probably relating to sales compensation. There's a lot of us who probably have nothing to do with coaching or content or recruiting or training. But by asking, this is an opportunity when you're doing a sales comp project, or even if you're doing a coaching project, you have an opportunity to go out and poll the organization and ask some questions while you do it and find out what the company's pains are about these other areas. And back to my point earlier about if you don't service your customer, somebody else will. This is your opportunity to get in front of that curve. So if you can't measure it, you cannot improve it. That's a pretty strong statement. And notice it doesn't say if you cannot measure it, you won't improve it. Right? So you could probably get away with making improvements to sales compensation and coaching and not actually measure all of them and still make some improvements. But I think what Kelvin discovered and the reality that I think really hits home with us in this room is if you'll measure it, you can improve it more. And so if you look at this last bullet up here, these are comments that we got from actual clients in interviews, somewhat whitewashed so that the innocent names are taken out. But look at this last one. Lack of visibility to operations. So what happened was we were there to fix a sales compensation problem, and in the process, we did a survey of all the field salespeople. Took everybody about 5 minutes to do that survey, and then we interviewed a bunch of sales leadership. As we got into it, a bunch of salespeople were saying, "Hey, I close a deal, I get a commission statement, and the deal's not on there. I have no clue what the status is. It just says waiting on operations, and it doesn't have any information about what the problem is." We went back and talked to operations. We found out basically that by having salespeople aware of some operational issues in the installations, they would go rattle the cages of ops, they would go to their client, get the right info, the discovery data they need, go back and fix actual operations problems. And the problem was twofold. Totally unbeknownst to us, not a part of this focus, was that the operations people were on no incentives. They were on a fixed base salary. So I guess my point is we asked some questions in this survey that wound up uncovering some plan design opportunities, and we created a compensation statement for these sales folks, and it showed on your comp statement what the problem was in operations, and we wound up cutting operations issues down by about 25%, and really helping drive the ROI of the incentive comp program.
So the interesting part about all these quotes is that these are quotes from sales reps, and I can't tell you how many companies we've been into who have actually asked us not to speak to sales reps as part of the business case. Right.
Yeah. So, and you're probably thinking the same thing, right? So, no way are you going to come in and interview all of our sales reps. There's a couple of different answers I get when we bring this up. When the person who's running the project is new to the role and they didn't have anything to do with the legacy system, they're usually pretty happy to say, "Yeah, let's survey everybody and let's figure out what the problems are." And sometimes even the folks that wrote those systems or helped build them are also equally eager. And what I'll tell you is if you're concerned about uncovering black eyes that are there because of old legacy systems, you're not alone. That's a common concern, but it's one that you should just wipe off the table because these problems are prolific. Every organization, you'd be amazed. I mean, the biggest companies in the world have the worst problems in the world. And so CFOs and CEOs can expect this stuff, first of all. Secondly, they're not going to see the results of all these surveys. You're going to control that information, and you're going to feed it back to the organization at the right time and the right form. So specifically, what are the takeaways for this approach that we're talking about, that we're advocating? It's very simple. 2 steps, really. That is, conduct interviews and do surveys. And the third, I think, is just a natural fallout of those, and then knowing how to interpret those. This is an extremely simple, basic recipe for gathering this ROI data. But essentially, you can put together a quick electronic survey. You can do it in a tool like SurveyMonkey. Get it out the door in a matter of 8 hours of work for you and 5 minutes of work for all the salespeople. And then interviews are a little more time-consuming. I think it's good to have somebody who's not an employee of your company do those interviews because we find people just open up. They tend to trust that consultant is is a neutral third party in that the company really wants to hear them open up and let loose. So this is an example of a closed-ended survey question. Do you understand your comp plan? And for this company, the numbers are what they are. What is this number? Everybody here has a sense for the answer in their company. Do people understand their comp plan? You probably know right now whether your reps in general or in majority understand them or don't. If they don't, what's the problem? Is it that the comp plan design itself, like they're looking at the paper and they don't understand the rules? Or is it just that their commission statement is so confusing today? And, well, what if we just automate that commission statement? So there's a ton of value out of asking a question like this. You've got to keep a mix of closed and open-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are quick, they're easy to answer, and sales reps can do them in about 5 minutes. We'll throw a couple of open-ended prose questions in with these, and you will be amazed. I mean, some people won't answer them, but some people will put a diatribe down. And interpreting that data is a pain in the neck. It takes some time, but you can normalize it down and really begin to see information that you did not have without asking these questions.
What I love about the close-in questions is that you can measure it before and after. And it's an apples-to-apples comparison to see if your numbers are improving.
Mm-hmm. So what's your company's answer on is my pay accurate, right? So in this case, the numbers are what they are for this particular company. If you don't ask this question, if you don't do a survey, then you'll have a gut sense that you had an accuracy issue before the project. A year after go live or 2 years after go live, it's probably going to be pretty clear that your accuracy issue has been improved or gone away if you did your job correctly. But what will be impossible to prove is how much you improved your accuracy. And the number, the actual reduction in errors matters less than the perception of the reduction in errors. So it's the perception of your salespeople that if you can get this from, 50% think that their pay is accurate most of the time to 95% think their pay is accurate most of the time, you can drop that number in front of your CFO, CEO, and VP of Sales 2 years from now. I think aside from simply being a feather in your own cap and giving you the recognition that you deserve, this tells the company what the return on investment has been for their SPM spend. And without doing this, your company may make a bad decision about whether to continue the project, right? So if you can prove a high ROI, they may decide, hey, we're going to go international with this. We're going to put it in the other 6 divisions. And so there's really a hard dollar impact to the return on investment of the project itself as to whether or not you measure these things. And I think that gets back to that Kelvin principle. You cannot change what you do not measure.
And Charlie, my favorite answer on one of the times we did that survey, the most prevailing answer was eventually. The sales reps felt like they were getting paid correctly eventually. Not the first time, but it was corrected.
Yeah, it exists. What's the best thing about my comp plan? It exists. That's like 25 people in a pretty big sales organization answered the question that way. I'm not sure what that actually told us. So, what's the worst thing about our compensation plan? I mean, one of the things, when you ask this question, you get very high participation. You get a large number of people answering the question. And in this case, people were all over the map in their descriptions of what was the best and the worst, but we saw consistent messages from this particular client. As a top performer, I earn about the same amount of money as a low performer. I cannot impact national account purchases, so why would I visit them? We found issues with perceptions in the salespeople that actually wound up impacting compensation plan design. You had some people that were superstars that were making as much as the person next to them, and plan design was not even a part of that project. I think it didn't even necessarily have to become a part of the project. That's a decision probably for someone else. If you're doing the comp implementation, somebody else can decide, but at least you've given them that data. The risk that you run by not doing this is if people feel like, what's it matter? What do I do? It's not going to affect my pay. I'm going to make as much as the low performer anyway. Then you're going to put this great new SPM system into place, and you're not going to drive any behavior change. And there goes your ROI. So by asking this question, we were able to pick up on a couple of issues that existed and
you also want to see what they like about the current plan to make sure you don't take it away.
That's right. Yeah.
If the thing people liked most about your plan was it was not capped, and then you decided to cap the plan in conjunction with putting in a new system, good luck getting adoption on the system. I guarantee you they'll hate it.
Right. That's right. And David Chikelli from Alexander Group has this funny story he tells about doing comp plan design for some fish company, and it's basically run by some guys that are borderline mobsters, and they think they have a comp plan design problem, but Chikelli sat down with them and figured out pretty quickly it was a territory and job role alignment issue. And so the problem you set out to solve is not necessarily the only problem that the company needs to solve in order to have a successful project. And Jason just talked about this example where, if the salespeople love the fact that there's no cap on earnings, for example, and then it's your job to implement a new system and at the same time put a cap on earnings, well, guess whose best friend you're not going to be, and that can really impact the adoption of the system. Whether you put in something in the new sales plan design that people hate, it can really revolt against the system itself. So this is just another example of a question you can ask in your survey, and as you get responses, we got responses to this. How many people understand how their incentives are calculated? What's the cause of the people that are in this 37% disagree and strongly disagree? Is it that the statements just aren't clear enough? Well, we found situations where you had a sales organization that had branches. And out in the branches, before you have a system like Callidus, you can pretty much do whatever you want to. You can have somebody with a spreadsheet changing numbers. The managers in the field offices were supposed to be enforcing these product bundles. You sell X, Y, and Z, all three of them together. That's the bundle, and that gives you the kicker rate. We had managers in certain offices that just decided, this in our office, X and Y are the bundle. And so when they turned the new system on, people didn't understand the calculations. Well, without this kind of survey data, you'd be left wondering, is it just that you've put in a new Callidus system and you designed the reports poorly? So in case you haven't picked up on it yet, I'm pretty adamant that you should be surveying and asking your folks about these things. So I may need some help restarting this. Somebody's mouse or maybe myself has stopped the presentation. There we go. So I like this. I like this stat in the left side. I don't like it, but it was very telling. The single best thing about my sales compensation statement. Half of the sales force skipped this question. So half of the people in the company had nothing good to say, essentially, about the sales compensation. As we went through that was the answer from sales reps filling out like a survey monkey. As we went through and interviewed management in the same situation, managers said our competitors know about our prolific sales comp issues, and they're using it to recruit our people. Everybody's heard about our issues, and they're using that to recruit our people. Okay. Again, if we had come in here, the normal approach to doing a business case, you take a spreadsheet and figure out what Gartner says about overpayments and how many comp admins Callidus says we're going to be able to live with after we go live, we would have missed out on all these opportunities to really tweak the business processes behind the scenes. So this is a modeling curve. It's a graph showing where sales reps fall within their quota attainment, and this particular distribution is unique to the company that you're looking at. When we do modeling with a client, or when a client uses a system like Callidus to model their compensation, they're able to do a far more accurate job of looking at the data than they could with spreadsheets or without a modeling tool like this. In the case of the client I'm thinking of here, the plan was to implement an SPM system. We had a go-live date. The plan was to roll out new comp statements. At no point during the 5 days before the Capital Appropriations Committee did we talk about sitting down for a month side by side and doing nothing but modeling in a room for a month. But we did it. So what happened was, I like to recommend to clients crawl, walk, run. You know, turn the system on and start paying commissions. That's crawl. Learn how to operate the system yourself. Maybe enhance the reports. That's walk. And maybe a year into running the system or 6 months into running the system, you've got the historical data and you can take a breath from paying commissions to be able to do some modeling. Well, these guys, as soon as they went live, the first week they wanted to start modeling out of the system. So we put somebody on site to come help them since they had almost no experience running a system. And we sat in a room with the sales executives down the hall, back and forth with the VP of Sales Operations running models. We were able to eliminate about $20 million in budget overruns that they had experienced the year before. Fast forward a year later, we modeled to the point where we knew down to the dollar that they were going to hit their budget if they hit their quotas. And if they exceeded their quotas, they were, that the plan was self-funding, so they weren't going to run into that issue again. So huge ROI. And
so Charlie, was that part of the original business case?
it was not part of the original business case. We only get this by going back and measuring. So when I talk about this session today, we called it the business case for modern SPM. I'm not talking about just a business case to get the project approved. This involves going back and measuring your success after go live. Okay.
So a recent phenomenon that we're seeing as companies with Callidus really pioneering the SPM space and building a broad spectrum of products available that can be used to motivate salespeople. One thing that we're seeing recently, definitely in the last 18 months, is the coaching and the incentive pieces being looked at the same time. You know, there's obviously a strong overlap in the data that are used to calculate the metrics used for either or. So the question that we get from clients is, well, you know, we don't have the manpower to implement simultaneously, so what makes sense to implement first? And so this is what we're finding. We're finding there's a lot of good reasons to implement coaching first, which I have listed out here. It's easier to implement, the speed to market. You can really get a coaching system up with KPIs much more quickly usually than an incentive system, essentially because incentives have to undergo more rigor, you have to be more exact. Coaching, you can kind of throw stuff up against the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks, and if it doesn't, you take it down, you try something else. Nobody's paycheck is on the line because of that. You can get some process improvement for really for the same reason. You can make adjustments to your coaching techniques and the way you're measuring KPIs and what you're measuring people on, so you can start to find out what works. With incentives, you make a change to a comp plan, you have to go through approvals, you have to model it, you have to cost it out. There's some companies that can't make changes more frequently than once every year, and so your process can't improve very quickly in that scenario. You can lower turnover risk. Charlie alluded to Kimberly Clark's example of with coaching, they can turn some B reps into A reps and C reps into B reps, and they can keep their job. That improves your turnover ratio because if you're relying just on your incentive program to weed out the bad reps, they'll start seeing their paychecks and they'll leave. Whereas with coaching, you have the opportunity to coach them up before their paychecks start to suffer. Your managers learn to coach. I can't tell you how many companies want to put behavioral-related metrics into their incentive plans to drive their reps' behavior. Whereas what's more effective is to set it up in coaching and to have your coaches coach those behaviors.
An example of that would be we've got coaching metrics, and if you improve on your customer satisfaction after implementation, then we note that during the coaching process, and so we're going to pay you an incentive because you stepped it up a level in your coaching metrics. And I think if that was the plan before you hired us, we would come in and recommend that you think about only paying for performance. So not paying based on what the coaching profile said you improved, but rather looking at the end result, the actual revenue, the actual bookings, and let that coaching take root and take effect and take the natural course. So,
right, good point. A lot of times I compare it to basketball coaching. My sons play a lot of basketball, and when you're coaching how to make a better free throw, you coach them on where to put their elbow and their stance and their balance. However, ultimately, they're going to get rewarded for making the shot. So there's coaching versus paying on results. And also the last bullet down there, if you're starting to coaching the right behaviors or the behaviors that you're looking for before you start looking at your plans and start modifying the plans, then the behavior changes you're looking for end up getting baked into those numbers, and you can start modeling after the behavior's already changed, and it can make your plans a lot more accurate, your quotas and your territories. Now, there's also some really, really strong, good reasons to still implement incentives first. The biggest being ROI is just flat out easier to calculate. There's hard numbers around error correction and improved efficiency. Numbers CFOs understand. Coaching is a little softer. It's making some speculative guesses about the advantages. So you're more likely to get budget approval. Compensation has higher visibility. People care about it. It's emotional. People's paychecks are on the line. Oftentimes with either of these projects, you have to do a fair amount of work to get your data prepared for measuring either metrics on either side. You're more likely to get approval to fix data problems to pay people correctly than you are to coach them correctly. And so that's why we still see more often than not, coaching has to ride the back of an incentive business case. However, there's some really strong reasons to implement coaching first if you have the opportunity to.
So I think the takeaway is not, for your organization, should you do Callidus coaching? Should you do it before or after ICM? The point is, look at the broad SPM landscape. Look at all the projects you might be doing in the next several years and sequence them as part of your business case. Because, for example, if you would get a lot more ROI from doing incentives first and doing coaching second, and then you do them in reverse order, that really has a huge impact to the return on investment you get. And so it's something that needs to be thought about as you go into your business cases, the sequencing of these things. The most common one I see is people say, hey, our data is an absolute mess. We should spend a year or a year and a half fixing all of our data problems before we can put in a sales comp system. I won't bother to comment on my opinion on that, but it's the kind of thing you should definitely be thinking about is sequencing the timing of these implementations. Okay?
It's a nice segue. So how many people here watch ESPN? Every Sunday night, the Not Top 10, one of my favorite bits that's on TV today. So we came up with the Not Top 10 business case ideas for putting together your business case. Number 10, we can better motivate our salespeople by paying them daily. Somebody here has tried that. This actually isn't well, first off, there's very few organizations where that's even possible to get the data in time to do that. And there's even fewer number of job roles where it makes sense to set daily quotas and pay them daily. However, there's just better ways to motivate people on a daily basis, using coaching or other techniques. And everybody in this room probably knows the administrative burden of paying daily ends up making it not worth it. Number 9, our new cloud-based system will allow us to fire IT and hire more sales reps. This is a true business case situation that has been presented to us before. And what we're telling clients now, which is what we're seeing, which is backed up by empirical evidence, is that IT is not going away with the cloud. They're just being reallocated to more strategic initiatives. Most IT staffs are vastly understaffed as it is, and that's the reason for some of the service level drops that are leading more businesses to go to the cloud. Number 8, standardizing processes within a centralized system will stop the regions from making constant changes. I've got news for everybody. Putting all this in the system doesn't stop the changes from happening. In fact, quite the opposite. What we're seeing is that standardizing the processes actually gives disparate business units more flexibility and more options. Products such as Callidus gives ultimate power to the business. Now, we do recommend that everybody stays within certain guidelines and maybe a centralized set of criteria that every region can choose from. But then let the regions who know their business the best design their more specific role-based, region-based plans. Number 7. Come on. There you go. We will cut our overall commission spend due to no more overpayments. Sales management will gladly let us reallocate that money to HR. This happened to me once. I was in HR. Cut the commission spend by about $1.5 million one year due to some better modeling. and that money didn't get to go anywhere else. Sales like to keep hold of it. So this cannot be used in a business case more often than not. What sales management wants to do, and rightly so, is they want the money that they paid last year plus a little bit more, and they just want to allocate it a little better, pay their better people a little more, give them better incentives, and drive sales. Number 6, we can minimize project expense by not consulting our sales team. This is something Charlie talked about ad nauseum during the rest of this presentation. We can't tell you enough how important it is to talk to sales. I heard the term the other day with a client called sales time degradation. We don't want to disturb salespeople. They're selling. Well, I'll tell you what, most salespeople are extremely interested in what's going on the compensation side. And you'd be surprised. A lot of them, I've talked to salespeople before who will flat out tell me, oh yeah, I'm overpaid, he's overpaid, and he's overpaid. And I agree, the business needs to figure out how to solve that problem. Not every sales guy is like that, but some of them are. Number 5, putting our ineffective plans into a great system will solve everything. And everybody in this room knows that a bad plan is going to be a bad plan no matter what system you put it into. There are cases where the operations or some of the reporting or other things can be fixed to improve the effectiveness of the plan. But on a whole, if it's not motivating the right behaviors, it's not going to work no matter what system you put it in. Number 4, our data is so dirty we should spend 3 years scrubbing instead of doing SPM. And so Charlie already came up with a punchline for that one. But the fact is, a project to improve the compensation processes can help you identify your problems with your data and can actually help get that expedited. If you're just trying to fix your data and you're afraid of doing anything else past that point, you're really losing. There's a big opportunity cost there. Number 3, this new system will cause everyone to agree on what to do with compensation. Once again, the system usually brings more options. You start giving your sales management, everybody, these tools. They start looking at the possibilities. They see some demos from Callidus, and their mind opens up, and they actually want more, which is not a bad thing. But you should not go into it assuming that everyone's going to agree from that point on. Number 2, having this automated will force management to finalize plans and quotas prior to the beginning of the year. Some companies pull this off with or without a system. We can tell you that with a nice system such as Callidus, they have better access to the data, so it is possible to get your plan designs done sooner. However, people are still people. They still procrastinate. They still hesitate on making decisions, and so I wouldn't get your hopes up on getting everything in sooner. And number 1, on the not top 10 business case ideas, I really like my sales rep. This usually does not go over very well. As much as we appreciate it, we appreciate clients liking us and prospects liking us. Purchasing anything based on how you feel about us is probably not a good idea. Not going to go over well with the CFO.
Okay, so thanks for taking time out from gaming. Go get your game on back in Vegas and turn that magnifying glass back around on yourself. Take another look at your business case. Start up a Google Doc or get out a notebook and start writing these problems down that relate to configuring and pricing and quoting and coaching and incentive comp, because at the end of the year, you're going to retain about 10% of that stuff. And a year from now, you're still going to be going for more money to do something. So thanks, everybody.